Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. Here we are starting our adventure in Berlin. We're going to visit Eastern Europe, so come go with us.
First of all, good afternoon. Now that I finally have you all on the bus. And of course, welcome to Berlin. My name is Miriam, and I am only here right now to pick you up from the airport and take you to the hotel. But tomorrow I will be coming back to join you, and tomorrow we'll be spending a full day together exploring the city of Berlin. So we've got a big program tomorrow, and if we're lucky, we'll have weather similar to this. Weather's been very unpredictable and very, very cold. Unusually cold in Berlin. Also in Berlin, in the last couple of days, it seems as if everything is collapsing. Even though summer vacation started 3 days ago, traffic has become absolutely unpredictable. Yesterday, an old World War II bomb was discovered in the Tiergarten area. The biggest construction site of Europe had a fire, both at the same time during rush hour. All kinds of vital roads were blocked in the middle of the city and the traffic broke down. Today, we've got 150 kids running up and down the main road in downtown West Berlin, doing a counter demonstration to the big love parade tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have at least 750,000 young people from all over the world in Berlin celebrating the love parade. So I can't promise you anything about traffic right now. This, for instance, isn't normal. Friday afternoon traffic should be long gone. We should be at the hotel in a jiffy. I do not know why we have this congestion here. We'll have to see. Normally we're pretty good at predicting things, but the last couple of days have been so jinxed that I'm not going to promise you anything. But well, actually, yes, I will promise you one thing. I will promise you that I will do my very best to show you as much as I can tomorrow, despite the love parade. But as you can imagine, when you've got 750,000 people dancing up and down a street in the middle of the city, you can imagine the congestion around that. But we'll do our best and hope that the weather is good, because then the Berliners that are not dancing there will leave the city to go, I don't know, for a picnic or swimming or something of the sort. So that's what you want to pray for tonight, and then we should be okay. And of course, during the sightseeing tour, you'll have all kinds of chances to see the historical sites of Berlin. Only problem we might get is in connection with the Brandenburg Gate. We'll have to see how close we can get to it. I'll get you there somehow, but I can't yet tell you how close. But aside from that, normally it takes about 15-20 minutes to the hotel. We'll have to see how traffic goes from here, maybe improvise a little bit. But we're not very far away from the Hotel Palace. The Hotel Palace, the hotel you'll be spending 2 nights, I believe, here in Berlin, is located in the middle of downtown West Berlin, right next to a very famous landmark of Berlin, the Emperor William Memorial Churches. A ruinous church that you might have seen in newscasts or something of the sort, or heard about before. And right at the memorial churches is where the Kurfürstendamm begins, the Kudamm, as the Berliner says, which is the Grand Boulevard in the downtown West Berlin area, the big shopping and amusement center, basically our street of Berlin in downtown West Berlin. Do realize that tomorrow is Saturday and we will be together the whole day, so that means shops close tomorrow at 4. And that means, of course, that if you wanted to do any shopping in Berlin, it would have to be today. The shops will be open until 8 o'clock, so that would still be a possibility, just in case any of you were hoping to look around a little bit in that sense. Definitely, no matter how tired you are, I know you have a transatlantic flight behind you, I wouldn't go to sleep until at least 8:30 if I were you, or you'll be jet lagged for the rest of the trip. So maybe that'll be a way to keep yourself awake, to tour the city's center a little bit, get some fresh air, stretch your legs. Generally, the downtown area also offers other forms of distraction, rather than spending money. Of course, you could visit the Memorial Church. I mean, it's at your beck and call right there. And also the zoological gardens are right across the street from your hotel. And the Berlin Zoo is the oldest zoo of Germany and one of the zoos with the most species in all of Europe. And so that definitely is worth seeing. And putting all statistics aside, it's simply a nice place. And we have 2 panda bears there right now. We've lent one from China, female panda from China, 2 years ago, and for more than 2 years now we've been unsuccessfully trying to mate them. I don't know how much you know about panda bears, but they don't like to go through the natural motions when they're prisoners. They lack some vital hormone or something of the sort, and so biologists and veterinary doctors all over the world are working very hard on trying to produce offspring, and it's a very big prestige, as you can imagine, if one zoo succeeded in doing so. And well, the female from Beijing, she's 3. Our male is 19, and he seems to have bad breath because she just won't let him near her. We had a little girl from London once, a little panda girl, of course, and she almost bit his ear off, so he hasn't been very successful. We'll have to see. We've attempted artificial insemination now, so maybe when you go there you'll hear that she just has been successfully fertilized. We don't know. But anyway, that's just one of the many, many, many different animals that we have in the zoo. Generally, Berlin, to get back to the city as a whole, is, as you might already know, by far the largest city of Germany. Berlin lies on an area of 889 square kilometers. That means that the German cities Stuttgart, Munich, Frankfurt on River Main, and Bonn would all fit into Greater Berlin at the same time. Or if you would rather have an international comparison, you could take Paris and it would fit into Greater Berlin 8 times if you didn't count the suburbs of Paris, but just the city of Paris as a whole. In Berlin we have 23 administrative districts, and we're very lucky concerning the density of population. It's ridiculously low, not up to European standards at all. We only have about 3.5 million people in Berlin. And despite the fact that we're aiming for a big political change in the next few months, the fact that the city of Berlin will be turned into the governmental capital, the active political capital of Germany, is not going to bring about much of a rise in the population. Statistics say that at most it'll go up to about 4 million. That's all. Because right now we're actually losing population. It's getting too expensive and too chaotic to live in Berlin, so especially young families are moving out of Berlin. More are moving out than are moving in at the moment. Generally, the sightseeing tour tomorrow, of course, will be dominated by a certain amount of things. Background information, therefore, never hurts. And obviously, you do realize that Berlin was divided after World War II. History class may or may not be long ago, but definitely, I always do encounter some that get a little bit muddled about the historical dates. So let me just refresh your memory a little bit. One of the biggest confusions are between the political division and the physical division of Berlin, and that's very important that you make that difference, that you take that step in your heads in order to understand the setup in Berlin today. Berlin was divided into sectors by the Allies in 1945. It was not, however, until 1948 that the Allies stopped working together, and that the West and East Berlin delegations of the German government in Berlin stopped communicating. The result of that, to put it in a nutshell, was the Berlin blockade. Almost exactly 50 years ago, the blockade started, which made the airlift necessary. We're celebrating the airlift right now, the 50th anniversary of the airlift that took place between June of 1948 and May of 1949. And after the blockade was lifted in spring of 49, the Federal Republic of Germany was founded, West Germany in other words, and the reaction to that was the founding of the German Democratic Republic, the GDR, East Germany. And that is when the political split of Germany was official, and therefore also official in Berlin. But it was not until 1961, August 13th of 1961, that the wall was built, cutting West Berlin off from East Berlin as well as East Germany. And that's another one. The Berlin Wall was not only an urban border. The Berlin Wall ran through Berlin, but also around West Berlin. It circled West Berlin entirely. That's the only way this wall would have made any sense. But the purpose of it was, of course, to keep East Germans out of West Berlin. And therefore, with the location or the position of West Berlin in the middle of East Germany, you needed a wall to circle the city. During the sightseeing tour tomorrow, however, we will be dealing more or less only with the urban aspect of the Berlin Wall. The wall was in Berlin for 28 years, built on August 13th of 1961, torn down on November 9th, or, well, let's say symbolically, it collapsed on November 9th of 1989. And again, it's important to point out that it was not until October 3rd of 1990, almost a year later, that the reunification actually occurred. And only the elections in Germany in the fall of 90 were going to bring us the future. If a more liberal political party had won the elections, maybe they would have chosen to go another course. But only as it was because of the result of the elections, because the Christian Democratic Party won these elections in East and West Germany, could this reunification take place as quick as it did. In 1991, German Parliament came together in Berlin to determine whether the government should stay in Bonn or whether they should heed to the history and respect what they had agreed upon in West Germany in 1949, which was, in case of a reunification, Berlin would return to being capital. Nobody, of course, expected in 1949 that it would take quite this long, and so they had to reassess the situation, had to think and determine what could be done and should be done, and the decision was made in Parliament that Berlin should be the capital again. By the way, Berlin won this vote only by 18 votes majority of what, 650 parliamentarians, so it wasn't a big victory. There were many that were very against the move of the government to Berlin, which explains all the problems we're having now and all the dissatisfaction amongst the government, but also amongst the population, especially in Bonn. They're losing their grounds of existence at the moment, or much of it. But nonetheless, the decision was made, and the decision was final. It was made in 1991, and the government is sticking to that decision. And so we are in the last stages of preparation for the government to move to Berlin. On the 23rd of May of 1999, in less than a year, Parliament will be inaugurated in Berlin. That'll be the 50th anniversary of the German Constitution, 50 years of democracy. That's worth celebrating, don't you think? If you know German history a little bit, you realize that is. And by 2000, January 2000, the Chancellor will be in Berlin. Then we'll have a functioning government in our city. So that is, of course, something you'll see traces of that all over Berlin, traces of the Cold War history of Berlin. And of course, you will see traces of the, let's say, economical reactions to the reunification, which of course is that suddenly a gold rush started in Berlin. Suddenly investors saw a new potential in a new location. Europe's borders were crumbling. Germany's borders had disappeared. Suddenly Berlin was quite a central city in the middle of a reunified Europe, let's say, and therefore lots and lots of companies, businesses, money is coming into Berlin, and all kinds of construction is going on as a result of that. So that's another thing that you will definitely be overwhelmed by tomorrow during the tour. Well, as you see, that little bit of congestion at the beginning wasn't normal, but it wasn't harmful either. Here we have some smooth driving, and we're almost in the city center. Coming up ahead in a moment, you'll see the very characteristic silhouette of the Emperor William Memorial Churches. And the old church is about 100 years old. It was inaugurated in 1895 in honor of Emperor William I. Heavily damaged during World War II, and don't think we've just been too lazy to repair it. It was deliberately left standing as a warning against war and destruction. I mean, this church once had a steeple of, I would guess, about 80 meters, maybe, approximately, pointed church tower. And in 1961, the modern church was added. You'll see the modern structures when we get closer. And the modern church was added, made of 25,000 leaded glass windows, small, blue, dominantly blue windows that were made in Chartres in France. Chartres is very famous for its glasswork and its cathedral. It's a beautiful cathedral in Chartres. And so even though the modern structures look rather drab and gray and kind of very sharp-edged during the day, at night they're quite spectacular when they're illuminated from the inside out. And your hotel is right behind the memorial churches, so if you're still awake when it's dark in Berlin, it's a bad time to find darkness in Berlin, of course. We went past Midsummer Night not too long ago. We're very far north, and so therefore our nights are restricted to about 5 hours. I would say maybe 5.5 hours of darkness right now, this time of the year. We still get daylight until way after 10 o'clock, and it turns light again at 4 o'clock in the morning. But if you wake up sometime between then take a look. Behind the memorial churches, and this is really for the sake of your orientation, is a tall building with a Mercedes star rotating on its roof. You can't see the Mercedes star yet, but you will eventually. Your hotel is inside that building. That's the Europe Center. So if you do go wandering and you get confused, look for that Mercedes star up there. Okay, that'll get you home. That's the best way to do it. See, we don't have a Manhattan here in Berlin, so that's for our standards a pretty tall building, as you might realize. And that's your best point of orientation. Here to your left, we have the big train station Zoological Gardens, a very big and important junction point for public transportation. And by the way, Berlin has one of the best public transportation networks, at least of Europe. I would even be bold enough to claim one of the best of the world, one of the most extensive, with trams, subway, city train, and buses going every imaginable direction here in Berlin. Inside the Europe Center, you'll find a money exchange. If you want to exchange cash, if you need German money, then cash exchange is best if you go to an exchange office rather than a bank, because they don't charge commission and they give you a fair rate. Right next to Kentucky Fried Chicken. You won't see that because we're going into the tunnel, but that's where there's a Wechselstube, an exchange office. If you have American Express traveler's checks, there are American Express here, but I would suggest then ask the people at the lobby in the hotel. That's what they're there for. That's easier than if I tried to explain it in abstraction now. So basically, however, zoo is over there to your left. Shopping is on the other side of this building in abundance. There's nothing you can't buy here unless it's illegal. And I think that's pretty much all you'll probably want to do tonight. And I'll see you tomorrow at, wait, let me check. I think it's 9 o'clock. Yes, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock we depart from here for our full day sightseeing.
Well, Betty, we certainly have a wonderful guide. Don't you think so? She is wonderful.
So knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And she's from Minnesota. She was raised in Minnesota, but her parents were German.
Uh-huh.
That's why she speaks such good English.
Yeah.
She has a wonderful background of the history of
Oh, she
Germany.
certainly does. Yeah. No, it's really great.
Here we're
And-
eating breakfast.
Well, it's the next morning already,
yes.
huh?
Now, didn't time go by fast?
It certainly did. And you know what? This is one of the best breakfasts that I've ever seen. I mean, this hotel in Berlin really had a
great
fabulous
selection.
breakfast.
Mhm,
Oh,
yeah. And most of the breakfasts, as you can see along the way too, are buffet style. So you take what you want and go back if you want more.
Oh, and they were making omelets for you or whatever, crepes or whatever you wanted in the morning. It was very, very nice, I'll tell you. But I'd never heard of the Love Parade before, and I didn't know that there was such a thing. And so we're going to see a little bit maybe about that today.
We could have done without that, but that was part of the...
Oh, no. That's part of the excitement, I think.
Oh,
That's
you thought
real.
so? Well, they kept me
yeah.
awake all night because my room was right on the street.
Well, they had music going all night. That's very, very
Aye.
true. And it was something else. And I don't know what was going on with the Berliners. The native Berliners. They I guess they have to put up with this. But maybe the Love Parade's only there once
a year is
yeah.
when it happens. But she was mistaken about 750,000.
Yeah, I think there are more people. Let's find out.
I listened to the news this morning. They are expecting, I was wrong yesterday. Last year we already topped 1 million for the Love Parade, so they're definitely expecting 1 million this year. I mean, I've been hearing every imaginable language in the city already this morning. And you see all the kids on the roads here. They're here, of course, because, I mean, obviously most of them are teenagers. They haven't got that much money. It's expensive to buy the train ticket, to get into the clubs for the parties last night and tonight. And so they haven't got money for overnight. And also, all the cheap places, of course, are booked solid, well in advance. Last year we had such spectacularly hot weather that actually the kids were fainting from the heat, and so last year it was no problem to spend the night just going to the clubs, but now these kids of course are dead tired and in a pretty bad mood. Forecast actually said it wouldn't rain today. We'll have to see. Sun's supposed to come out eventually, so hoping for us, of course, more than for the kids in the Love Parade, but generally the coolness of the weather is actually quite comfortable. It's better than last year during the Love Parade, I think we had 35 degrees centigrade or Celsius, which is pretty hot, even with an air-conditioned bus. Just briefly, I would like to introduce our driver who's going to be spending the day with us. His name is Joachim, and he's going to be helping me trying to show you the city. And I heard on the news this morning that most of the areas where the Love Parade is going to take place, which is not going to start officially until 2 o'clock, already were blocked this morning well before getting up. But we're going to try to improvise a little in the morning. I'm going to try to cover the real iffy areas where I know that the roads will be blocked, definitely later on, right now in the morning. Because of the situation as it is, of course, in the morning, the early part of the day will be zigzagging a little bit. And maybe you'll kind of lose your orientation a little bit. But in the end, I think it'll all fall into place. And I'll try to give you the cross-references so that it does make sense. So, as I said, right now, for the beginning, I really can't promise anything right now, but I'll do my best.
Don't worry about it. We don't know where we're going, and we'll just depend on you.
Yeah, but...
And we'll be very happy.
Okay.
We won't know the difference.
Okay.
Just call it names.
Call it names. Okay. What if I told you this building is something and it's not this?
I know.
You wouldn't know.
We'll believe you.
Okay. Okay, right now we're facing north. We've left behind, of course, the new city center, the downtown West Berlin area, and we're heading in the direction of Tiergarten. And in the Tiergarten, we've got a big main road, which is the east-west. East-west axis, and the east-west axis runs straight through the big Tiergarten Park. You see the big column back there to your left behind the trees? The column of victory. There.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? That column of victory will be the center of the Love Parade today. So that's our problem. That's where our problem is. That's what we have to circumvent, basically, and that's what we'll try to do. Here to your left is one of the many canals of Berlin. If you translated its name, it would be the Moat Canal. Moat Canal implies, of course, that parts of the ditch outside of the fortification were once used in order to create this canal, and so in part this canal still marks the old fortification of Berlin. And now usually, you know, when you think of fortifications, you think of medieval cities, fortified cities, but then again, most European cities grew in time, and so therefore their fortifications grew in time as well, or new ones replaced old ones. And the last generation of fortification in Berlin actually stood until 1861. Only through the industrialization was it absolutely necessary, of course, to tear that down and create something else, or that is to cause for it to cease to exist entirely, to tear it down entirely, because the industrialization, of course, caused for Berlin to burst from its seams, to explode in every direction size-wise. And in the last generation of fortification, we had 18 city gates. Only one still exists today, the Brandenburg Gate. And of course, by crossing this canal, that means we're already getting very close to, or actually into, the older parts of Berlin. We're not, however, yet quite at the district Mitte. The district Mitte, the German word means middle or center, is of course the true geographical and historical center of Berlin. The street up ahead used to have a different name than it does today. The street up ahead is Stauffenbergstraße. Today used to be Bendlerstraße. And at least the Germans of your generation definitely react to the word Bendlerblock. And that is always associated with the military of Germany until 1945 and with the German officer Stauffenberg. Here to your left used to be the headquarters of the German Wehrmacht, the armed forces in Germany until 1945. Inside this large complex, the Navy, counter-espionage, and the Army had their headquarters. And the Army part of the building was here to your left, in front of us, the part of the building facing Bendlerstraße. And that's why this was the Bendler Block. And this is where Stauffenberg had his offices. Klaus Graf Schenk von Stauffenberg, a royalman and officer of the German Wehrmacht, was the man who attempted to assassinate Adolf Hitler on July 20th of 1944. This assassination did not take place in Berlin, or this attempt did not take place in Berlin, but rather in Hitler's headquarters, which was east of Berlin, the Wolfschanze, at the time. And so Stauffenberg returned to Berlin believing that he had been successful. Only here, inside this building did he learn that he had not been successful, that rather he had failed, and that Hitler had not been killed. His fellow officers that had conspired against Hitler with him had already been arrested, and Stauffenberg was as well. One had already been forced actually to commit suicide. He was basically confronted with eternal disgrace or suicide, and he chose suicide, and the others were shot on the courtyard of the building. And therefore we now have a permanent exhibition inside that building that commemorates the German resistance against National Socialism. Aside from that, in connection with the move of the government that I spoke about yesterday, we've already chosen this building also as the future seat of the Minister of Defense here in Berlin. And now we're coming into, or at least close to, the new cultural center of West Berlin. And the Cultural Center of West Berlin, here to your right, was created, of course, out of necessity, was created as a consequence of the division of Berlin. When Berlin was divided, the district Mitte ended up in East Berlin. And that means the historical center of Berlin was in East Berlin. All the urban structures you expect in an old European city were therefore in East Berlin, or in the immediate surroundings. So West Berlin was really left with just a bunching of residential areas and some of the lesser important urban structures. But all these important things simply didn't exist. So they had to create newly, usually in West Berlin because of the division. And that means that, of course, today, in the reunified city, everything that counts, we have at least twice. We have 2 city centers, 2 big national galleries, 2 state libraries, 2 big concert halls, 3 opera houses, and so on and so forth. And, of course, 2 cultural centers. And here to your right, this is the newer one, the one that was created as a reaction to the division of Berlin. And the first building to be created here was inaugurated in 1963. To your right, in front of us, the golden building that you can already kind of see through the trees, is the Philharmonic Orchestra Hall, which was made famous through the conductor Herbert von Karajan, world famous conductor in his time, and as you might notice, the street has just been renamed in his commemoration. And also the acoustics inside this building are sensational. Next to the Philharmonic Orchestra Hall is the Chamber Music Hall, which was a gift from the city of Bonn to West Berlin on the occasion of Berlin's 750th anniversary, which was in 1987. Then here to your right, we have the Museum of Applied Art, or Handicraft Museum, and that orangish brick building is the Museum of European Art and the Copper Plate Museum. And between the two is our newest acquisition, a brand new building, which was only inaugurated about 2 weeks ago. That's our new picture gallery. And inside this picture gallery we have approximately 1,400 paintings covering 600 years of art history, which means that Berlin now, since the re-inauguration of this collection, is able to compete on a European level, if not an international one. We definitely can compete with the collections in London.
Well, we have just actually started our city tour of Berlin, West Berlin and East Berlin.
Yeah,
and
that was a lot to have to absorb. You
yeah,
know, and
well, she was so marvelous.
Was so
she had
good
so
that
much
she had
stuff,
so
yeah.
much to offer, but you had to listen carefully.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you get a good orientation, I'll tell you. And we'll see more, of course, on our next episode. But if you're interested in any of the trips that we have coming up, give Betty a call at
488-7443.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.